Hi, thanks for joining me for this video on compiling Delft3D for Linux using Windows Subsystem for Linux. Today, we're going to show how to set up Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL, install an operating system into a WSL, and then use that Linux OS we've installed to compile Delft3D. Like previous videos, I've created a gist on my GitHub gist site that details all of the steps required for following this tutorial. To give a quick overview, what we're going to do is we're going to set up WSL in Windows 10. Then we're going to install the CentOS version 7 operating system in WSL. We're going to start that CentOS, and then we're going to install the dependencies required for Delft3D. Then we're going to install Delft3D itself, and then we're going to test it. So one of the first questions you might be asking is, why are we using Windows Subsystem for Linux? Well, basically it provides flexibility, not only to work with Linux inside Windows, but also because it's pretty easy to set up for different operating systems and different versions of operating systems. And that helps because the compilation instructions for Delft3D and Linux are pretty specific to specific versions, to a specific operating system. If you follow the guide, the Delft3D Getting Started page, which is linked here, I think I will just open that in a new tab. You'll see that when it comes to compiling for Linux, if we go down here to look for the required software, there are very specific needs for versions. So a particular version of MPIC, netcdf, etc., etc. So using the same operating system that they do in Deltares, CentOS 7, and using the same or similar packages will make sure that our compilation is more likely to be successful. Okay, so let's go back to the gist, and we'll look at this setup WSL section. And we're going to follow the official guide from Microsoft. So let's open this up in a new tab, put it over here. And actually the process for installing WSL is now relatively simple. We're just going to issue this command in a PowerShell. Note that default Linux is installed when you use this command, and that default Linux is Ubuntu. We don't want to use Ubuntu for this process, but the alternative default Linuxes that you can use do not include CentOS 7. We're going to install our own ones. We need to install something in this process, and that's going to be Ubuntu. So we're just going to leave it as it is. It makes it the time taken to install WSL a bit longer, but that's okay. I'm going to use time acceleration to make it quicker for you. So we need to open a PowerShell. Let's just type PowerShell in the search bar. And we'll run it as administrator. Let's go practice. Okay. There we go. Let's make it a bit smaller. Okay, and then we'll just copy and paste this command. And we will wait. Okay, so the system says it needs a reboot, so let's do that now. So my system has restarted, and now Ubuntu is completing its installation. So let's wait for that to finish, and then we can check that we can log in successfully. And that will show us that WSL has been installed properly. Okay, so it's asking us to create a username, so I'm just going to call it test for now. And it needs our password. Okay, and there we go, we're in. So this is a Linux. Whoa. Perfect. Okay, so we want to get out of this. So let's just type exit. We really want to be able to access this from a PowerShell. So let's open PowerShell again as an administrator. Yes. Okay. Make it a bit smaller again. And let's type in WSL list. Okay. Ah, it has a previous CentOS. I see. That doesn't exist anymore. That's one of my previous attempts. Clearly I didn't delete it properly. But then, so let's just try Ubuntu, because I know that CentOS isn't going to work. Okay, there we go. We are in. Perfect. Okay, so this has worked. Let's get out again, type exit. Perfect. So I'm just going to try and make sure that this CentOS 7 is not here, because I don't want it to upset anything we're going to do. So I'm going to issue the command WSL unregister, and then I'm going to do CentOS 7. And then let's list again. Okay, great. So it's not there anymore. That was a previous attempt. I deleted it. So we're going to start from scratch. So going back to the tutorial instructions, the next job is to install CentOS version 7 in our WSL. The CentOS 7 is old now. There's CentOS version 8. So in order to get this to work, we have to use a distribution from the now discontinued CentWSL project. This is a project on GitHub. We'll open this in a new tab. It's been archived. Fortunately, the files are all here, so we can still use this process. And so that's helpful. The version you need to download is this version 7 release. So let's download that now. Click, and we need this zip file. Okay, so we have the download now. This will be in our downloads folder. It's a bit smaller. Let's go back to the guide. So yeah, we want to move this file, or we want to unzip this file into a permanent location, because after we install it into WSL, we won't be able to move it. So let's extract it. Just check what's in there. Okay. And then we'll take the cut and paste this folder. And I'm going to put it into a folder called WSL. That's where it's going to live. Okay. And then we're going to follow a guide from howtoshout.com about how to install this into WSL. So let's just open the guide now. So we've already collected the file, we've unzipped it. Okay, now we need to double click CentOS.exe, so let's go and do that. It's going to run anyway. Okay. I just put enter there. So what is this to do? Okay, so now let's check in our PowerShell window to see if it's there. Yes, it is. Okay, perfect. So that's it. let's see if we can start it. So we do WSL-D CentOS 7. Okay. Our next task is to set a password for the root user in our CentOS operating system, and then to add a normal user account as well. So if we go back to the guide, we've installed the distribution. Now we set a root password. So to log in to CentOS as the root user, we use this command here in our PowerShell, and then once we're logged in, we can use this command here to set the password. So let's copy this command over. Okay, there we go. We're logged in as root. So now we'll issue this command to change the password. Okay. There we go. We set up the root password. And now, while we're still logged in as root, let's set a new user. So we're going to use these commands over here. So add user, and then set a password again using this password command, but we use the username to say that we want to set the password on this account. I'm going to call this normal user account Delft3D, but you can choose any name you like. So let's do this then. Go, that's a new user added, and let's set a password on the account. Okay. Okay, so that's the password set on the account. The last thing we want to do is make that new user we've created, the normal user account, as the default when we log into CentOS using WSL. So to do that for operating systems that we've installed manually, we need to add this WSL conf file. We're going to use the vi text editor in the terminal to set this file up. So we just issue this command, open the file. Okay, and then to start typing in vi, we just press I as the insert key. And then we're going to add this text here. Where it says Delft3D, if you've used a different username, then replace that there. So let's add this now. Okay, press escape to exit the editing mode, and then to save this file, we type :WQ and press enter. And that's the file saved. So to check this works, we need to restart WSL and then log back in. So to do that, we type exit first to get out. And then we issue this WSL shutdown command. Okay, and then we boot back in to CentOS without specifying a user. And voila, we're in as the normal user. Okay, so let's return to the guide. And our next step is to install the dependencies required for building Delft3D in CentOS. If we look now at the Delft3D compilation guide, again, this get started page, we see that there are a number of dependencies that are required for building Delft3D, but also that a number of dependencies require us to use exactly the same C++ and FORTRAN compiler to build these dependencies and to build Delft3D. So this means that a number of the dependencies will have to be built from source, particularly MPIC, particularly netcdf. Fortunately, a number of the other dependencies that we have to install here can be installed with CentOS's Yum package manager, so that makes it a lot easier. The compiler that we'll be using to build Delft3D and the dependencies we have to build from source is the Intel OneAPI compiler for Linux. There's a link here that gives an overview of OneAPI. We've used OneAPI for installing Delft3D in the Windows videos we've done previously, and this is just the version for Linux. It has the classic ifort command FORTRAN compiler. Fortunately, Intel have a special repository for using the Yum package manager to download Intel OneAPI, which makes it a lot easier. If we look at this guide from Intel, just open this in a new link and close this one. There are some instructions on how to set it up. If we scroll down, the most important part we have here is producing this file here and moving it into this location here. The easiest way to create this file is simply to copy this code and follow it using this button here and paste it into your PowerShell window. We see where's the normal user. We created Delft3D here, so I'll just right click to paste, press enter, and then I'll just open that file to make sure it looks sensible. Just use vi again. Yeah, looks perfect. So I'll come out, I'll just :q, exclamation mark to quit. Okay, and then we're not using sudo here, so we're gonna log in as the root user. So we're gonna go, oh, that's wrong PowerShell. We're gonna go su dash, enter the password you created. And then we can just do this part of the command here. Okay, so now Yum should be set up to see the Intel repositories. So let's go back to the guide. We're already super users, so we don't need this step. We just need to copy this Yum instruction here. Paste that in. And yeah, there may be a few questions. We just have to answer yes to these. Just why. Okay, 3.2 gigabytes. That's going to take a little while. I'll press yes, and then we'll turn the mic off and we will wait for it to finish. Okay, so we now have to let it know it's okay to install. It wants to install a key again, so we'll just tell it that's okay. Hang on a sec. That's okay. That's okay. And now it's going to install the packages, and this will take a while as well. So there we go. That is the Intel OneAPI packages installed. We won't need everything that it has installed, but again, for convenience, this is just the easiest way to get it onto the computer. So let's go back to the guide now. And the next job is to make sure that the iFort compiler is accessible to normal users. So we have to add a little setup script that's provided in the Intel compiler that just configures all of the necessary paths, etc., to make that happen. So to do this, we go back to our PowerShell, and the first thing we need to do is log out from being root. So I'm just going to do Control-D to do that. And then what we need to do is edit our user bashrc file, .bashrc file. It's very important that you are not root. If you do this for root, this is not going to work for the normal user. So just make sure it says Delft3D and or whatever your username is here and not root. So let's get this up a bit. Okay, so we're just going to use vi again. Let's do that. There we go. Okay, and we're going to use our arrow keys to get to the bottom. We're going to do Shift A, capital A, to start inserting at the end of that line. And then we're just going to copy this text here, this command, into the file. New line there. Same thing as we did before, :wq to save the file. Okay, and exit vi. Okay, so we need to log out and back into CentOS. Okay, so I will type exit. Now I'm back into PowerShell, and we'll log back in. There we go, that looks promising. And then let's type this command here to check the version of the Intel FORTRAN compiler. There we go. Job done. Going back to the guide then, the next instructions are for installing dependencies with Yum. So all of the dependencies that we can install with Yum, we are going to just to make our job simpler. So the first thing we need to do to use to use Yum is to become super user again. So let's do that. su dash, enter your password. Okay, and then there are two different installs here. We're going to do this development tools, and then we're going to do everything else that we need. So copy and paste. Yes. Okay, there we go. And then we can copy and paste this second command to pick up all the other things that we need. Okay, so that's all the dependencies that we need from Yum. And our next job is to start compiling the other dependencies we need. So going back to the guide again, there's a section about compiling these compiled dependencies. We're going to install these packages into this path home. So this is your Linux CentOS home directory, D3D local. Before that, we're going to download all of the packages into this home downloads directory, and we're going to make this downloads directory because it doesn't exist. We'll make both. I think the D3D local one will be generated automatically when the packages start installing. So below here, a list of the packages we are going to build. So MPIC2, HDF5, which is dependency for netcdf, C, and FORTRAN, and that's it. And you'll see that the configure commands get more and more complicated as they rely on each other. So starting from the top, we'll just make this downloads directory and move into it. So let's go back to our PowerShell. I don't think first job's probably not to be root anymore. Yeah, I missed coming out, so let's exit. There we go. Make sure that you're the normal user for this section. So let's see. Let's copy this. Okay. And let's move into it. Great. Okay, just check where we should be at home Delft3D downloads. Perfect. So the next step is repetitive. So we're just gonna use wget to get the version of the software that we want as a tar.gunzip file, and then we're going to untar it. We're going to call the configure command, and this part at the end just saves the output to a file. Then we're going to call make to actually build the software, make check, then test that the build work, and then make install installs it into this D3D local directory. And yeah, we're going to repeat this process for these 4 packages. It's going to be very similar. I'll come in and out as we go through, but just to give you an idea of the steps that are taken for each one. So let's just call this wget command first to get the MPIC source code. Okay, there we go. And then let's untar it. And we'll move into the directory just to show you that. So there's the tar file and there's the untarred directory. So let's move into there. Then we call this configure command to prepare the make files. And these steps can take some time, so I might accelerate some parts of the video when we're going through these stages. Okay, so the configuration is completed, so we can now call make. So I'll just copy this command over here, press enter, and wait. Okay, so the make process there took a long time. You should note also that the testing process can take a long time, but it's worth doing just to make sure everything's built okay. So we're just going to copy this make check command now. And again, copy it into our PowerShell, or into our terminal, I should say. Just move this up a bit, can I? Can it let me? No. Okay. Enter. And there we go. So it's going to build some tests now and test them. And yeah, we'll wait for that to finish. I take it back. It was very fast. There you go. Some of the test suites take much longer than that. So now let's do the final step, which is an install. So we'll just copy the make install command. Okay, and we're gonna just very quickly check that it's installed where we expected. So I'm gonna cd out of here. And there's the new D3D local directory. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, so it's installed into this D3D local directory. That's great. So just cd this back into downloads. Okay, and then we can move on to the next package, and that's HDF5. So similar approach for HDF5. We download the tarred archive, we untar it, we configure it, make it, test it, install it. So pretty much the same. So let's start. Download it first. Make sure you're back in the downloads directory and not still in the mpic directory. Just cd ... It's at the end of the instructions up there. Okay, then we're gonna untar it. Okay, we'll move into the directory. So there should be a new directory there. There we go, HDF5. And then we're going to call the configure command. Okay, so much faster that time. Now let's call make again. Okay, so the make stage's finished. Now let's do the testing stage again. Let's make check command. Okay, so the tests took a long time on that one. We got a lot of passes, so that's good. So now let's just finish with the install stage. Perfect, and we'll come out of the directory. So the next package we need to build is netcdf, and this comes in two flavors. There is netcdf C, which is the base package, and then netcdf FORTRAN, which is a sort of plugin module for it. So exactly the same process as before. We are going to fetch the archives. So we're going to rename this archive just to give it a more recognizable name. We're going to untar it. Then we're going to configure, build, test, and install. So same as before. So we're in the downloads directory. So let's get the software. Quite a big download, this one. And then let's untar it. Change the directory. Call configure. The configure commands are getting longer now. So now I've disabled some of the tests that require an internet connection because they typically tend to fail. Okay, that's quite a quick configuration, and let's build. Okay, so the build was pretty quick, so let's run the tests now. Okay, so looks like the tests pass. Okay, so now we need to do the install stage. So let's just copy and paste that over. Gives you a little message. And now we can do the FORTRAN version. So let's go down. Download the source code. Untar it. Change directory. Then, yeah, I need to set a couple of different environment variables to get configured to work in this case. That's the configuration finished. Now let's build. Build's finished, so next stage is to test. So let's do the make check. Okay, so that's great. Passed. So finally we need to install. And that's good. We've installed and we're done for the dependencies. So let's come back into the downloads directory. So finally we've reached the stage where we can build and install Delft3D. We need to download the source code. We're going to get that from the Deltaris SVN repository. Note that you need to have a Deltaris account to access the SVN server. If you haven't got an account yet, if you go to the guide, this get started page, and scroll up from here. Okay, so you need to register. So what you do, you don't click that link because it doesn't work. You go to login and register. And once you've registered, they will send you a username and password, maybe. I can't remember if you set your own password, probably, to access the SVN server. So let's download the source code from the Delft3D server. So let's copy this command at the top here, paste it in. I've already saved my password into this, so, and maybe my username too. So I'm just going to call this, but you should enter your username and password. And then I'm going to press enter. There we go. Started downloading. And this is not as slow as it is on Windows, but it still takes a little while. So the source code's downloaded. As I said, it wasn't as slow as it is on Windows, which is good. So the next stage is we actually need to copy some of the source code files to different directories. Otherwise, the compilation for Swan in particular won't work. So that's what these next two lines do here. We're just going to copy these files between these directories. So we'll just, it's a pretty quick process. There we go. Okay, then we move into the src directory in the Delft3D source code as normal. Then we need to do this export command for AutoGen to see where the compiler is, and then we can call AutoGen to build the make files, build the configure files, in fact. Okay, there we go. So now we'll call configure with all of these flags. It's a big long command, so make sure you get it all. There we go. Okay, so configure's done, and as normal, the next stage is the make stage. So this really does take a long time, this build, so go and find something else to do while it's working. Yeah, and I'll turn off the mic and come back when it's finished. Okay, so that's the first part of the compilation finished. You get these, you don't have execution permission warnings, but it doesn't seem to have any effect in my experience. To enable the flexible mesh parts of the code, we have to do a second build step, which is here in this command here. So just copy that. And off we go again. Okay, so the compilation has completed, and that's it. Delft3D should be ready to go. So let's just list this directory. There should be a bin directory. Let's list that. Okay, and there's all of the executables. So perfect. So let's just come out this directory to the root. So the final stage of this process is just to run a couple of quick tests, and we can use the examples provided by Delft3D. This is one of the reasons we installed into the download directory, because these examples have relative paths from these examples into the source code. So it's necessary to install into the into the Delft3D directory, at least in the first instance, to run these tests. So it's pretty easy. We're just going to move into the example directories using this pushd command, which just puts the directory onto the directory we're in onto this little stack, and then we can come back out with this popd command. It's a pretty handy Linux command. Okay, there we go. And then we're just going to call this run script. Okay, and that's just, that test was for the structured code, so that's working fine. So let's come out. The next test is for the flexible mesh, so let's move into this slightly deeper directory. And then we'll run the code again with the run script. There we go, done. So just come out, and that's it. We're finished. You have your Delft3D compilation completed in Windows Subsystem for Linux. Thank you for watching this video. More content coming up soon.